The US government owes 38 trillion, and it is never going to pay it back. Not because it will default, not because it will go bankrupt, but because it found a way to make the debt disappear, quietly, legally, and directly out of your savings account without a single headline. If you have a savings account, a 401k, or a pension, you are already part of this plan, not as a beneficiary, as the funding source. Every year that inflation runs higher than the interest on your savings, you are quietly losing purchasing power. You are not being taxed, you are not being asked, but you are paying, and the bill is going directly toward erasing the national debt. This is not a conspiracy. This is a documented historical strategy, and the US government has done it before. It is called the silent default, and it is already running. In 1945, the US national debt hit 119% of GDP, larger relative to the economy than it is today. The government did not raise taxes to pay it down. It did not cut spending. It ran negative real interest rates for nearly a decade. By 1955, the debt burden had been cut nearly in half, not by paying it off, but by inflating the economy around it. The Federal Reserve confirmed this playbook in a 2011 research paper titled The Liquidation of Government Debt. It is not hidden, it is a strategy, and it is happening again. Here is how it works, and pay close attention because each step looks completely normal on its own. It is only when you see the full loop that you realize what is happening. Step 1, the government borrows money by issuing treasury bonds. Investors, pension funds, foreign governments, regular people, buy those bonds expecting to be paid back in full with interest. Step 2, the Federal Reserve keeps interest rates below the real rate of inflation. If inflation is running at 6% and your treasury bond pays 3%, you are earning a negative real return of minus 3% per year. In dollar terms, you get all your money back. In purchasing power terms, you have lost 3% of your wealth every single year. Step 3, the debt's real value shrinks. The government still owes $38 trillion in nominal dollars. But if those dollars are worth less every year, the real burden of the debt falls automatically. At 5% annual inflation sustained for a decade, the real value of a fixed debt drops by more than 40%. No payments, no default, just math. This is the loop. The government borrows, the Fed suppresses rates, inflation runs hot, your savings lose value, the debt shrinks in real terms, repeat. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The government cannot raise rates high enough to stop this loop, because if it did, the interest payments on $38 trillion would be catastrophic. At 10% interest rates, the level used to kill inflation in the 1980s, the annual interest bill on today's debt would be $3.8 trillion. Total federal tax revenue right now is approximately $4.9 trillion. The government would be spending 78 cents of every dollar collected just on interest. It cannot afford real interest rates, so it will not allow them. The Federal Reserve, which is supposed to be independent, is now functionally constrained by the size of the national debt. This condition has a name, fiscal dominance, and once it takes hold, the inflation signal stops being a warning. It becomes the policy. 3 tools make this loop invisible to most people, and you have already felt all 3. The first is the captive buyer. Banks and pension funds are legally required to hold U.S. Treasury bonds as high-quality liquid assets under financial regulations like Basel III. This creates an artificial floor of demand for government debt, regardless of how poor the real return is. Your pension fund is not buying government bonds because it is a good deal. It's buying them because the law says it must. The second is CPI manipulation. Social Security payments, inflation-protected bonds, and dozens of federal programs are indexed to the Consumer Price Index. But the CPI methodology has been quietly revised since the 1980s. Substitution bias, hedonic adjustments, in ways that consistently produce a lower number than the original formula would. If you use the 1980 calculation today, annual inflation would register roughly 6 to 8 percentage points higher than the official figure. The government's incentive to keep that number low is not subtle. It saves billions per year in index payments. The third is quantitative easing. When foreign governments like China and Japan stop buying US bonds, which they have both been doing since 2022, the Federal Reserve steps in as the buyer of last resort. It prints money to buy the debt nobody else wants. This suppresses yields, floods the economy with new dollars, and inflates asset prices. Your 401k looks higher, your house looks more valuable, but those gains are denominated in a currency that buys less than it did 3 years ago. This process does not hit everyone equally. There is a name for the reason why. The Cantillon effect, described by 18th century economist Richard Cantillon, explains that new money entering an economy benefits the people who receive it first. The Federal Reserve injects new money into the financial system by purchasing bonds from major institutions: Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BlackRock. Those institutions receive the money before inflation has had a chance to spread. They buy assets, stocks go up, real estate goes up. The wealth of anyone who already owns assets expands. By the time that new money trickles down to wages, groceries, and rent, the prices have already moved. The asset-owning class gets the purchasing power before inflation. The wage-earning class gets it after. This is why, since 2008, total U.S. household wealth has grown by $100 trillion, while median real wages have grown by approximately 9% over the same period. The number goes up, the share going to the bottom 90% does not. If this continues unchecked for another decade at 5% annual inflation, the purchasing power of every dollar sitting in your savings account today will be cut by 40% by 2035. That is not a projection. That is compound arithmetic. So here is the question nobody in Washington wants you to sit with. The US government is not failing to pay the debt. It is paying it using the purchasing power of your savings as the currency. Every dollar you keep in cash, every bond you hold, every fixed income account earning less than real inflation, that is your contribution to erasing $38 trillion. The debt is not disappearing, it is being transferred, and the transfer is already underway. The real question is not whether the US can afford its debt, it is whether you can afford the plan they are using to erase it.